After downloading an app on her cell phone that tells her how much life she has left, a young nurse begins to be stalked by a macabre entity and must find a way to put an end to the evil app. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, Countdown, from 2019. In a house in the American suburbs, several young people have organized a party and are taking advantage of the night to drink and have fun. Among them, a group of friends are gathered around the table playing cards, but when it's young Kate's turn, she's distracted by looking at apps on her cell phone. One of these apps is called Countdown, which is used to help people stick to their diet. One of her friends becomes interested and decides to look it up on her phone, but instead she finds another app with the same name but a different function. According to the app, whoever downloads it will know how many years, days or even hours they have left to live. The group then challenges each other to download the app and find out when they will perish, and whoever has the least time left to live will lose the game. Everyone agrees with the idea, except Courtney, but she ends up giving in to pressure from her friends. To her misfortune, while the others have years to live, Courtney only has 3 hours left, which scares her, but her friends insist it's just a joke. When the party is over, the girl gets into her boyfriend Evan's car, but he is visibly drunk. Still fearing that the app is telling the truth, she decides to walk home and her boyfriend, irritated by her behavior, drives off and leaves her alone. Courtney then walks down the street, until a mysterious guy in a black coat starts following her. To make matters worse, she receives a notification from the app saying that the girl only has a few minutes to live, which only makes her more nervous and she rushes back home. Inside, she goes to the bathroom and turns off her cell phone. However, the device turns on again, showing the last seconds of her life and, when the timer runs out, Courtney is pulled up to the ceiling and eliminated by an unknown entity, which throws her body against the bathtub. At the same moment, her boyfriend had a serious car accident, crashing into a tree. Evan managed to survive, but the bench Courtney was sitting on was cut through by the tree trunk, proving that the app is indeed capable of showing when a person is going to perish. Far away, in a hospital, young intern Quinn is doing her job as a nurse, but sees that a patient has escaped from the room. She finds him in the hospital's closed ward and the patient is Evan, Courtney's boyfriend. He says he's worried about what happened to Courtney, because she perished at the same time as the Countdown app. The nurse tries to calm him down and takes him back to his room, but he tells her that, according to the app, he only has 19 hours left to live. A few minutes later, Quinn meets the head nurse, Amy, who has organized a party with her colleagues to celebrate the young woman's arrival at the hospital. They all celebrate the event by eating a cake and Quinn comments on the app that Evan introduced her to. Some of her colleagues decide to install it to see if it's real, including Dr. Sullivan, who is happy to see that he will live to be 90. The group then proceeds to celebrate, but suddenly, a mysterious fellow brings in a young woman who is suffering from an illness. Dr. Sullivan and the nurses promptly inject her with a substance that makes her wake up, and finally, they save the young woman. After this unusual event, Quinn is leaving the hospital, until she receives a notification asking her to install the Countdown app. Thinking it's all nonsense, she downloads it and accepts the terms, but to her amazement, the app tells her that she only has a little more than 2 days before she perishes. Although she thinks it's strange, she remains skeptical about the app and goes to her parents' house to look for the documents required to hire her. When she gets there, there's no one in the room, but she senses that something or someone is nearby and goes to check the cupboard. When she opens it, she finds her younger sister, Jordan, next to her boyfriend. Quinn tells them both to leave, but Jordan shows great resentment towards her sister for being absent since their mother perishment. Quinn tries to make things right with her, but the girl locks herself in her room just as their father, Charlie, appears in the hallway. He is still very upset about his wife's perishment and asks Quinn to accompany them to her grave to pay her respects. The next day, Evan is still in hospital, but he's getting more and more nervous as the app tells him he only has 3 minutes left. He then decides to take advantage of the nurse's inattention to escape, but as he does so, a notification from the app appears on his cell phone. The message says that Evan has broken the terms of the contract and, without understanding what this means, he continues his escape. As he walks down the corridor, he sees a strange figure in a black hood in the security mirror. The mirror is suddenly cracked and Evan runs for the security exit, but all the lights go out. He turns on the flashlight on his cell phone and finds Courtney on her back on the stairs. Evan calls out to her, but when she turns around, the girl has a monstrous face and goes after her boyfriend who, like her, is eliminated by being thrown from the top, just as the app's counter reaches 0. Shortly afterwards, Quinn arrives at the hospital and finds out what happened to Evan. Fearing that his elimination is related to the Countdown app, she goes to the patient's room and picks up his cell phone, but the screen is locked. With no other choice, she goes to the morgue, pulls out the young man's body and uses optical recognition to release the cell phone. As she suspected, the app's counter was reset and she fears that the same will happen to her, who has just one more day to live. By coincidence or not, the day of her perishment was the same day she was going to visit her mother's grave with her father. Because of this, she calls Charlie and asks to reschedule the visit, but in doing so, she also receives a message from the app, warning her that she has disobeyed the terms. After that, Quinn goes about her day nervously, but tries to continue with her work and goes to check a patient's vital signs. Dr. Sullivan notices her agitation and tries to comfort her, but then he shows he has other interests in the nurse and tries to kiss her. Quinn manages to free herself and leaves the room to talk to Amy, but the doctor stops her, calling the head nurse for urgent work. All that's left for Quinn to do is finish her shift and, on returning home, she begins to do more research into the elimination app. She reads the news about what happened to Courtney and Evan and believes that there is a strange connection between the events and the app. However, people's comments lead her to believe that it's all just nonsense. The young woman then closes her laptop, but just then, Evan appears in front of her, with a sinister face looking in her direction. Quinn freaks out and turns on the bedroom lamp, but the presence soon disappears. Soon after, the cell phone again notifies Quinn that she has broken the agreement, but she throws the cell phone against the floor, cracking its screen. Even so, the counter continues and now there is only one day left before it runs out and she is eliminated. The next morning, she decides to go to the store to buy a new cell phone, hoping to get rid of the countdown app. However, when she turns on the new device, the app appears to be installed again and, what's worse, there's no way to remove it from the system. She thinks it's a prank by the store owner, called Derek, but he says he doesn't know how the app got there. Quinn then leaves and returns to her car, but when she looks through the rear camera, the hooded entity appears in front of her. As she turns around, the presence disappears and she tries to drive off, but seconds later, two hands grab her face and make her crash into another vehicle. The driver of the other car doesn't like this at all and goes to take it up with Quinn, but a young man comes out of the cell phone store and gets into the argument to defend her. The driver drives off and the young man introduces himself as Matt, who overheard her conversation with the store owner and claims to have also used the app. The two of them go to a bar to talk about what's going on and realize that the app eliminations can't be mere coincidences. Quinn believes that the entity she has been seeing could be a supernatural creature and then she remembers the priest who works at the hospital. She decides to go there with Matt and the priest gives her the contact details of someone more qualified to fight demons and other evil beings. With this information, the two decide to look for him, but first, Quinn is called by Amy to sort out a hospital matter. Meanwhile, Matt goes to the bathroom, but suddenly, someone tries to force their way into his cabin when he looks underneath. He sees a boy's feet and tells him to leave, but as soon as Matt leaves, he hears the same boy crying inside the bathroom. Not only that, but the boy starts walking through the cabins and when he reaches the last one, Matt sees him bend his feet and disappear. Shortly afterwards, the lights go out and a bathroom door opens, but when Matt goes to check, the boy appears behind him and attacks him. Matt tries to resist and finally the entity disappears, but the young man seems to recognize the boy who attacked him. At the same moment, Amy accompanies Quinn to the meeting room, where the hospital's human resources department is waiting for her. Shortly afterwards, Dr. Sullivan appears and tells Quinn that she has been called in to solve the cases in which the nurse tried to import him. The young nurse is furious when she hears this and says that the exact opposite happened, but no one seems to believe her. Angry at such injustice, she leaves and calls Matt to accompany her to the place indicated by the priest. Minutes later, the two arrive at the location indicated and meet a priest called John, who is far more unusual and eccentric than most. Even so, the priest believes the pair's story and tells them that the entity chasing them must be the demon called Ocean. He says that according to legend, a prince learned the date of his elimination from a gypsy, but he used this information to escape his fate. However, this awakened Ocean, who began to torment him until his destiny was fulfilled. Father John concludes by saying that the cell phone app could be a modern version of the gypsy's vision and that their only hope is to try to hack it. Quinn then remembers the owner of the cell phone store, Derek, and goes there to ask for his help. Fortunately, Derek manages to hack into the app and not only does he have access to people's time of perishment, but he also manages to extend it. He does this with his own lifespan and then Quinn asks him to do the same with hers and discovers that her sister has also accessed the app. Derek then extends the time of the two sisters and Matt to more than 50 years ahead, saving everyone from the Ocean entity. Afterwards, Quinn and Matt are about to say goodbye, but the two decide to take the time to spend the night together. They go to Quinn's apartment and she asks why Matt downloaded the app. He reveals that when he was little, his younger brother perished while he was still a child, so he was afraid of perishing and wanted to know how long he had to live. Quinn shares something similar and tells of the perishment of her mother, who was the victim of a car accident when she went to look for Quinn at a party. As they share these tragic experiences, the two end up connecting and Quinn calls Matt, who was lying on the floor, to sleep next to her. He accepts and, hours later, Quinn has the impression that someone is approaching the room. She calls out to Matt, who has his arm over her, but to her surprise, it's the real Matt who appears at the door, asking what happened. It turns out that the arms around Quinn were Ocean's and they soon turn into claws, which try to attack the young woman. Matt quickly manages to help her free herself, but when they look at their cell phones, they realize that the app's counter has returned to normal and now they only have a few hours left to live. Worried about her sister, Quinn calls Jordan, but her cell phone has been taken by the nanny. Upon hearing the call, Jordan goes to her room and tries to get the hidden cell phone, but at the same moment, Ocean's monstrous hand grabs her shoulder. Startled, the girl turns around, but there is no one around and, looking at the counter, she realizes that her lifespan has also decreased. She also sees several calls from her sister on the screen, but before she can call her, the lights in the house mysteriously start to go off and on. Frightened, Jordan tries to hide under the bed and watches from the other side of the door to see if anyone is coming. Suddenly, she hears her perished mother's voice. At the same moment, the bed above her is pulled away and the spirit of her mother appears next to her. Jordan runs scared towards the exit of the house and bumps into Quinn, who had arrived seconds before, together with Matt. The three then return to the priest's house to warn him that the plan has failed and Ocean is still after them. When they get there, they show the coding of the app, hacked by Matt, and the priest sees a text in Latin on it, talking about the curse caused by the entity. This is good news, however, because Father John believes that if it is a curse, it can be broken. He then sets up a plan to trick Ocean at his own game, and to do so, he has to prove that the entity is mistaken about the date of the eliminations. So the priest decides to perform a ritual that can keep Ocean away for at least a second after the time of their perishment. If they succeed, the curse can finally be broken and they will have cheated elimination. Then the four of them go down to the basement and create protective circles with salt to keep the entity away. But to prevent the salt from spreading, they mix it with paint and then draw a symbol of protection on the floor. With everything ready, the first on the elimination list is Matt, who has just 2 minutes left to live. The lights soon go out, indicating that Ocean is approaching. The four then gather inside the circle of protection and finally, Father John asks for divine protection, along with his cross. Seconds later, Ocean finally reveals his true form, but he can't get through the circle. Then, in front of Matt, a toy appears, the same one his younger brother was carrying while he was ill. Immediately afterwards, the image of his brother appears and Matt tries to approach him, but in doing so, he ends up stepping outside the circle. Because of this carelessness, Ocean manages to pull Matt out with his claws and takes him outside. Quinn rushes to help him and, when she arrives outside, she finds Matt safe and sound. Unfortunately, a speeding car crashes into him and presses him into a tree, eliminating him instantly. Matt's tragic fate has been fulfilled and now Quinn and her sister have little time left to live. Faced with his elimination, Quinn wonders if there is any hope of saving herself, but when she sees Jordan wounded after Ocean's attack, she musters what strength she has left to save her sister. Quinn then takes her to the hospital to treat her injury and, in the meantime, one of her colleagues shows up and says she believes her version of Dr. Sullivan. Quinn thanks her friend and, seeing the doctor looking after Jordan, she puts together a plan that could put an end to Ocean once and for all. After Dr. Sullivan treats Jordan's wound and goes to his office, Quinn follows him and tries to lure him away. Although the doctor finds her behavior strange, the young woman says she's doing it to get her job back and invites him to the hospital's unfinished wing. As expected, the doctor goes there and looks for Quinn in the corridor rooms. There, she proposes a game of hide and seek and lures the doctor with the sound of her voice. Dr. Sullivan tries to follow her, without realizing that Quinn is holding a crowbar. In a moment of distraction, she runs towards the doctor, knocks him to the ground and threatens to inject a dose of medicine to stop his heart. At this point, Jordan had followed her sister and, on finding her, asks what she intends to do. Quinn replies that if she proves the app wrong and Dr. Sullivan perishes prematurely, the curse will finally be broken. Her idea soon proves to be correct because, when she tries to inject the medication into Dr. Sullivan, Ocean pulls him away. Quinn goes after the doctor and ends up separating from Jordan, who receives a message on her cell phone informing her that she only has 2 minutes left to live. The clock is ticking and Quinn is determined to find Dr. Sullivan. However, he finds her first and knocks her to the ground with a punch, as well as picking up the crowbar. However, Quinn manages to escape and the doctor tries to find her, warning her that he will tell the police everything that happened. However, Quinn appears behind him, gives him a painful kick and, crowbar in hand, she prepares to give him the final blow. Dr. Sullivan manages to escape through the cabinets in the room and runs out the door, but his foot is injured and he can't run. Quinn then catches up with him and throws the crowbar, which hits the man's back and he falls to the floor. The young woman then pulls out the syringe, but before she can inject the doctor, Ocean uses his power and pushes her away. The impact of the fall causes Quinn to twist her foot and she can no longer pursue the doctor, who flees out the front door. Hopes are lost, but Quinn looks in a medicine cabinet and starts pulling out several of them, in her last attempt to save her sister. Meanwhile, Jordan tries to leave the hospital and ends up in the morgue, where she sees on her cell phone that she has just 1 minute left. The girl despairs and then Ocean appears and throws her against the glass window. Seconds pass on the cell phone and Jordan crawls to get away from the entity, but it pulls the girl close and shows its frightening face. Finally, it's time for Jordan to fulfill her destiny, but before she does, Quinn appears in front of Ocean and shows him the syringe. She threatens to eliminate herself in order to break the curse and save Jordan. However, the entity tries to stop her and soon takes on the form of the girl's mother in order to trick Quinn. On seeing the image of her mother, Quinn hesitates, but when she realizes that it isn't really her, she uses the syringe and falls to the ground, unconscious. Desperate, Ocean tries to pull Quinn up and stop her from dying, but it's too late and the curse has been broken. With that, Ocean turns into ashes that spread through the air, while Quinn's body is thrown to the ground. Jordan quickly runs to help her sister, but she doesn't answer her call. Then the girl sees a medicine in Quinn's hand and on her arm is written the name and the place where it should be applied. Jordan then takes the syringe, fills it with the medicine and injects it into the spot indicated by Quinn. After that, she begs her sister to come back and, after much insistence, Quinn wakes up and the sisters are reunited, after facing the macabre application. Days after this incident, the two sisters accompany their father to pay their last respects at their mother's grave. However, Quinn receives a new notification on her cell phone, informing her that the updated version of the Countdown app has been installed. Jordan looks at her sister and asks what happened. Before Quinn can say anything, a mysterious presence with a black hood appears in the distance, indicating that Ocean will continue to pursue them until the end. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.